Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's very exciting Free Library of Philadelphia Foundation author event. Who's excited to see Mr. Ray Didinger and Mr. Merrill Reese? I see a lot of green in this crowd. I like that. It's been an incredible author event season so far, complete with historians and artists and novelists and a Supreme Court justice. But there's still more to come, including events with Chris Matthews, Jonathan Karl, and several others. You can register for all of our events at our webpage, freelibraryfoundation.org. I want to say just a few quick words about our organization in general. The foundation works together with the Free Library to support programming and advance its mission of promoting literacy throughout the Philadelphia region. Now, of course, as a nonprofit, we are reliant upon your support to help us achieve these goals, so please do consider donating, which you can also do through our website. Again, that's freelibraryfoundation.org.
Thank you. Everyone know this guy, Daniel. He puts together this amazing season. Let's give him a round of applause. He's about 14 months into his gig, and I'm going to keep you.
I hope so.
Okay. I love you, Daniel. Thank you. I'm Monique. I run the foundation. I'm also celebrating my 2 years here at the foundation, and happy to be back home in Philadelphia, where I was born and raised. Before we get tonight's program going, there are a few people and organizations I'd like to thank. I would like to thank Uncle Bobby's, our partner bookseller. The Philadelphia, we can give it up for them. Those books, I hope everyone got a book. They're pretty big and heavy, so I hope everyone's going to have a nice coffee table book, right? Yeah. Yes, the Philadelphia Citizen, our media partner, right? We love them. And I also like to thank our volunteers, a dedicated group of library patrons who help us run this series. But in addition, as Daniel said, we work closely with the library staff, and let's give them a round of applause. A number of them in the booth recording this program, our security guards, and also we have a number of foundation staff here with us tonight who are helping. And let me extend a very special welcome to our friends, our newest corporate sponsor from FanDuel. We're grateful for their partnership on this very exciting evening, especially Keita Young, who helped bring this sponsorship forward. So we thank her and FanDuel. Yeah, let's give it, yes, we need all the support we can get. We bring author series to you, to the community, equitable, $5 event to see these two guys. That's priceless, right? We want to make sure it's accessible to everyone. So we need everyone's support, and we greatly appreciate all this green for being here tonight. Tonight we welcome Ray Didinger, who was a sports columnist for the Philadelphia Bulletin and the Philadelphia Daily News. He was named Pennsylvania Sportswriter of the Year. How many times? Five times. Okay, every year, right? He has authored or co-authored a dozen books and was the first print journalist inducted into the Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame. He was a talk show host on 94 WIP, sports radio, and did I say that wrong? WIP. I'm from Philly. Don't talk about me. Okay. I told one group I spoke in front of, it was Read by Fourth. I said I was gone 35 years. They were like, boo. I was like, oh, that's the Philly spirit. Thank you for booing me. Okay. And he was a football analyst for NBC Sports Philadelphia. In 1995, he won the Bill Nunn Award for his long and distinguished reporting on professional football, and his name was added to the Writers' Honor Roll at the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio. That's huge, yes. Tonight, we're celebrating the publication of the new edition of his Eagles Encyclopedia. Let's give it up.
Ray will be joined in conversation by Merrill Reese, who has been the Eagles radio play-by-play announcer for 48 consecutive seasons. A Philadelphia native, Reese was named sports director at Temple University's station, WRTI, and after graduation, he began his professional radio career at WPAZ in Pottstown, calling high school football games. Yeah, give it up for Pottstown, I guess. One person. There you go. After that, Reese began working for WBCB in Levittown, where he currently serves as the station's co-owner. In 1977, Reese provided Eagles color commentary alongside Charlie Swift at WIP, and the following year, the station made him the lead play-by-play sportscaster. Reese has received numerous awards and recognitions, including Pennsylvania Sportscaster of the Year and being inducted into the Pennsylvania Sports Hall of Fame. In 2024, he received the Pro Football Hall of Fame's coveted Pete Rozelle Radio and Television Award for broadcasting the team's triumph in Super Bowl 59. Folks, I hope you are as excited as we are for this conversation. Please join us in welcoming Ray Didinger and Merrill Reese.
Thank you all for coming out.
Here we are. Go Birds.
Now that we have that out of the way, well, how did you enjoy your bye week?
I enjoyed it because the Eagles gained by just being spectators.
Yeah, I mean, the Eagles didn't even play this weekend, but this weekend actually helped them. The Detroit Lions lost a game at home. Green Bay Packers lost a game at home.
To Carolina.
2-point underdogs, 2-touchdown underdog. The Dallas Cowboys lost.
The Dallas Cowboys may never win again. Did you see them? They couldn't stop Cindy.
Honestly, if you were a Philadelphia Eagle or a Philadelphia Eagle fan, this weekend could not have gone better. I mean, you just sat back, you put your feet up, put the TV on, and you just watched everything just fall into place for you. Every team you wanted to lose lost. And now you're 6-2, rolling into the second half of the season, and with a real chance to go back and do it again. Well, I thank you all for coming out for Eagles Encyclopedia. Some of you, we did one of these when I did the first Eagles Encyclopedia, which was back after the Eagles went to the Super Bowl in Jacksonville, the one that they lost to the Patriots there. We did the first edition of Eagles Encyclopedia then, with the idea that that was probably going to be it. And then we updated it again about 9 years later, just feeling like there were certain things that just kind of needed to be updated, as encyclopedias are. And then when they won Super Bowl 52, well, then we obviously had to update the book again because you couldn't very well not have Eagles Encyclopedia without the Philly special, obviously. So we did that. And then when the Eagles made their run last year to win their second Super Bowl, we went back to work to turn out Eagles Encyclopedia Champions 2. So that's the book we have here today, and thank you all for coming out and listening to us talk about it.
I mentioned to some people that I grew up reading Ray's books, and that inspired me to this career.
Merrill, I'm glad they asked Merrill to share the stage with me tonight because in many ways our stories, our histories are very, very similar. We're both Philly kids, both grew up going to Eagles games with our families at Franklin Field. The day the Eagles won the championship in 1960 at Franklin Field, beating the Lombardi Packers, Merrill and I were both there sitting in the stands. I was sitting in section EE in the end zone with my parents and my grandparents. Merrill was sitting with his family listening.
No, I was by myself.
Oh, well,
no,
Merrill.
I won a right to buy a ticket in a bulletin contest. and I bought my ticket to the championship game for $15, and I took a 42 trolley into town. I was all by myself in the end zone, right where Tommy McDonald slid into the snowbank.
Wow. So you and I were pretty
Yeah.
close together. And Merrill, of course, as many fans were back in those days, is listening to the game on his transistor radio, listening to the great Bill Campbell call
Yep.
the action. And can you imagine, I mean, years later, Merrill's the guy who's calling the Philly special when the Eagles win their first Super Bowl. What a wonderful way for history to repeat itself. So the idea for Eagles Encyclopedia Champions 2 came about in November of last year. As I said, we had already done 3 editions. The most recent one was after Super Bowl 52. And you remember how the season was looking right around Thanksgiving. Right around this time, a year ago, was the Eagles were playing lights out. And I called the editors at Temple Press, and I said, hey, guys, I have a feeling that these guys are going to win this thing again. And if they do you want to turn out another Eagles Encyclopedia? And Aaron, the editor, Aaron Jeffsikas, said, okay, we're going to have a meeting here, and I'll get back to you tomorrow. We're going to talk about it. And he called me back the next day and said, yeah, we want to do it. So at that point, we started planning, and I started getting stuff together, knowing that if the Eagles did win the Super Bowl, they actually did win it in February, my copy deadline to get this 542-page monster out in bookstores by this time this year, I had to have all of my copy in by the middle of March, which meant I had about 5.5 weeks to do this book. And so when they won the game and the confetti was falling, I went to work. And here we are, Eagles Encyclopedia 2. And it was probably the toughest deadline I ever faced to try and get that much copy generated and sent and proofread and into print in that period of time. But it was so much fun. It was so much fun to look back and recap that season, which, I mean, Merrill is probably the greatest season in the franchise's history.
It was.
It really was.
That's how he ended the broadcast, by saying, what a game, what a team, what a season. This is the greatest Eagles team in modern history. And then I said, savor it and rejoice. And that's how I felt. It was a wonderful, wonderful feeling. People often ask me, Ray, when I go into a Super Bowl, do you have something written that you will say, should they win? And I said, no. I said, I let it come from my heart. And that's what I did. That's what I felt in Super Bowl 52, where I said, wherever, Philadelphia Eagles fans everywhere, to celebrate. It's time to bring on the celebration. And it just comes because this is such an endearing moment for every one of us.
I think when you look back in the history of broadcasting, that's true. Everybody always wonders if those moments, those words are written, scripted ahead of time.
Many of them are.
And many of them are, but the best ones aren't. And when you, probably one of the greatest ever was Al Michaels at Lake Placid. Do you believe in miracles? At the end of the game when the American team beat the Soviets. And Al Michaels had not scripted any of that.
No.
Because nobody could have believed that it was ever going to happen that way. But that was what he was thinking. That was what he said. And it became one of the great calls of all time. Because it was spontaneous and because it wasn't scripted, it came from, as Merrill said, it came from his heart. And that's why I remember it. And that's why, Eagles fans, this is for you. Let the celebration begin.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we were all thinking, right? I mean, it's exactly what we were all thinking, and that was what Merrill said. He was always able to, and still to this day, he always finds the right word for the right moment.
Well, it's funny. Angelo Cataldi would have me on the morning show from time to time, and he would say, Merrill, I want them to win it for you because of all the things you've been through. And I would say to Angelo, and this is not being disingenuous, I would say, you know what? I am so lucky. I'm broadcasting the team that I grew up watching. I am somebody who has been out there, and I have called. I've had great Miracle of the Meadowlands calls, many of them. I've been there through so many great things. I'm sitting there. I've gotten to know the players, the coaches. I wanted to win. I wanted to win it, not for me, but for the fans, because you are the guys who spend your money on Eagles memorabilia. You get your kids the shirts. There are people who take out second mortgages to go to Eagles games, and they're out there in the seats in rain and snow and sleet. It's for the Eagles fans that they deserve it. And when that happened, it wasn't about me. It was about all of you.
There was, when we did Eagles Encyclopedia 3, the one after Super Bowl 52, there was a long discussion at the Temple University Press offices about what we should put on the cover. And we could have gone in a lot of different directions. There were a lot of choices, and they were all good choices. I mean, the Philly special, Nick Foles catching the ball in the end zone, not a bad choice when you think about it. You know, Doug Peterson and Jeff Lurie holding up the Lombardi Trophy, not a bad choice. I mean, there were a lot of really great shots that came out of that game. Brandon Graham, the strip sack on Tom Brady. But my feeling was, and I told the editors there, was that we had this wonderful picture of the parade coming up Broad Street. And the bus with the Eagles players on it, and the fans all crowding around it, and Swoop up front. And I just said, I think this is it. I think the parade and the celebration, I think this is our cover. Because to me, when the Eagles won Super Bowl 52, yes, it was about the team. Yes, it was about the coaches and players, and they ultimately won the game. I understand all that. But what that game meant in the bigger picture was what it meant to the city, what it meant to the fans, what it meant to all the people that had been with this team for generations. That whole celebration and that whole feeling that it brought to the city, and the way the outpouring that day of the parade, when all the people came to Broad Street and all the people came to Eakins Oval, and Jason Kelsey got up and gave that incredible speech about, you know, we're from Philly, nobody likes us, and we don't care. I mean, it was so...
Stop right there.
Everything was so perfect. Everything was so perfect about the way Philadelphia celebrated that moment and embraced that I said, I think that's got to be our cover. And we went with that cover of the parade as opposed to any of the football stuff. We went with that because really, to me, that first win was about what it meant to the city and what it meant to the fans that had suffered with this team for so long. I think that was the right choice. This time, we all kind of agreed it really wasn't much discussion. The story of the season last season really was the arrival and the brilliance of Saquon Barkley and the play against Jacksonville, a play the likes of which I've been watching a lot of football, and I've never seen that before. And we had a really good picture of it, so we had decided, yeah, that was the cover. And I don't think anybody's going to be second guessing that.
Do you know how many high school kids are getting hurt right now trying to jump over people backwards?
That was one of the things that Nick Sirianni said the day after that. Everybody, the day after it, in his press conference the day after, everybody was still buzzing about that play. And that was one of the things that Nick Sirianni said. You do realize that all over the Delaware Valley now, there are kids trying to do exactly what Saquon Barkley did there. And I'm sure that's true. I don't know that anybody's ever going to be able to duplicate that. Well, I have to ask you, because some of the people here probably have some questions or some thoughts about what the Eagles have done in the last couple days with some of the player acquisitions.
They've made three big player acquisitions. Right. They got a corner from Baltimore, Michael. He's going to be okay, I think.
Michael Carter.
Michael Carter. They got Jair Alexander. He came from Baltimore. Carter came from the Jets. And then they reached out and got Jalen Phillips from the Miami Dolphins, who was an edge rusher. So we'll see what he has. Vic Fangio will not just throw him in there. Vic is a tough coach, and he's one of the biggest reasons. When you talk about the reasons that this team won the Super Bowl last year, there is no bigger reason than Vic Fangio, what he has brought to this defense and how he makes certain that these people know what they're doing. Look how he kept Carter DeJean out until he was ready to come in because he didn't have a full preseason because of the hamstring. So he waits, but I think he's going to be fine.
Mm-hmm. Just to give you a little capsule of the three guys that the Eagles have brought in. Merrill was talking about Michael Carter, comes from the Jets, played at Duke, has been a pretty good player. Not a star, but a pretty good player. But a very specific player. His role on the team is he is what they call a slot defender. In other words, he guards the inside receiver. He doesn't play outside, he plays inside. That's what he does best. That's the position that Cooper DeJean plays most of the time. So the question is, how do the Eagles juggle their personnel? And where do they, if they put Michael Carter outside, he hasn't really played out there since he was at Duke, but he has played out there. But in the NFL, it's always been inside. So how does the coach decide how to utilize those players? That's one. Alexander is a guy that was a first-round draft pick years ago with Green Bay, had some injury issues, went to the Baltimore Ravens this year, and was a healthy scratch 3 times this year. In other words, healthy enough to play, and they didn't dress him. You know, I don't know what the backstory is there, but he obviously didn't seem to have a future in Baltimore. Gets a chance with a fresh start here. And then Jalen Phillips, who just arrived yesterday, was a very good player in college. Started at UCLA, finished up at Miami, was drafted in the first round of the draft of 2021 by the Miami Dolphins. And when he has been healthy, has been a very productive edge rusher, pressure on the quarterback, does that really well. If you're an Eagles fan, one of the encouraging things is his best season in the NFL was the season he played for Vic Fangio when Vic was the defensive coordinator with the Dolphins. He had 6.5 sacks that year. That was his best season playing for Vic. And I think Vic was one of the guys that was really pushing the Eagles to go out and bring him in because he felt like he could definitely add to the team. And he, like the other two guys, has been very good when he's been healthy, but he's had trouble staying healthy.
Ray, one of the things is that Howie Roseman is terrific. He's aggressive, he's knowledgeable, but you have to wait and see. Because last year there was a big to-do when they brought in Bryce Huff from the Jets, and he never materialized and he got hurt, and now he's back playing again and he's playing well.
Yes. It depends on the situation, it depends on the system, it depends on being, as many things are in life, not just in football, but in life, being in the right place at the right time. A guy could be exactly the same player and be in this situation and be relatively non-productive. Go somewhere else, find the right system, the right supporting cast, the right coaches, and excel. And the Eagles have seen both of those. You know, Merrill mentioned Bryce Huff came off a real great year. The previous year came to the Eagles and did next to nothing. That the trading deadline, Howie Roseman has always been aggressive. He's done it before. Trading deadline, he made an acquisition a couple years ago for a guy named Robert Quinn, who was a pass rusher. Thought he had been a pretty good player before. Figured they'd bring him in here, help the pass rush. Didn't do much at all. They also, the year they went to the Super Bowl, at midseason, they picked up Jay Ajayi, a running back, who came in and had problems in Miami, came here and played really well and really helped this team go to win a Super Bowl. So you get players at this time of the year. There's always kind of a reason why they're available. But sometimes if they come here and they get in the right situation, they thrive. And they can be a difference-making player. And the fact is the Eagles could use help at both these areas. They need help in the secondary. Anybody that's watched them this year knows that. And they need an extra pass rusher. They need somebody else to help get pressure on the quarterback because they have been lacking in that area. If Phillips is healthy and Phillips is able to play, he can help them. And also, we have the return of Brandon Graham.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I love Brandon Graham to death, but because he's coming back, he's now made my book obsolete. because the Brandon Graham profile is all about his wonderful retirement speech and his riding off into the sunset. And I finish up his career with saying, and he finished up in the 2024 season. Well, guess what? 2025, he's back. So I think, going through the book, I think that's probably the one factual mistake that you will find, is that I have Brandon Graham's career ending last with the Super Bowl, and we all know that wasn't true. And
wait a minute. Just wait a minute. I'm listening to Ray, not criticizing, but kidding about Brandon Graham. I was sitting there 4 years ago, practically crying when I heard Ray Didinger tearfully say goodbye to Glenn Macnow. Ray Didinger went into retirement. This retired guy is working more than he's ever worked.
Boy, I'm really glad my wife's not here to hear that. She reminds me of that every day.
Ray, I have to mention, because we're talking about personnel and about guys going around the league, you talk about quarterbacks. Do you realize Baker Mayfield is great right now with his 4th or 5th team in Tampa Bay? And it's all over the place going on like this. The quarterbacks are arriving and they're playing great football. And look at the Jets, what they gave up. And out there, look what's going on right now with in Seattle. It's amazing how things change.
It is. And one of the things that, and I mean, those of you that are here, obviously, to come out tonight, you're obviously football fans. You watch this season unfurling week by week. I can't remember another season, and I've been following this game for a long time, where we've reached this point of the season, where we're this deep into the season, and it is so wide open. It is so wide open. I mean, this is anybody's race right now, and the Eagles are right in the middle of it. And normally by now, there's one or two teams normally begin to separate themselves from all the other teams, and you kind of have a sense, okay, these are the teams. And last year, around this time, it was the Eagles and the Chiefs. I mean, you saw where it was headed, and that's where it wound up. Right now, you want to try and pick two teams, one from the NFC and one from the AFC, that are going to be playing in the Super Bowl. Go ahead and pick them. Good luck. Maybe you'll be proven right, but it's never been harder to distinguish who are the best teams and who's going to be playing in that final weekend. And, I mean, you could make a case for half a dozen, maybe 7 or 8 teams that are in it.
Buffalo?
Yeah, Buffalo for sure. Buffalo for sure. I mean, Kansas City started the year poorly. A lot of people wrote them off. Now they've come back. Buffalo beat them on Sunday, but you know the Chiefs aren't going away. In the NFC,
nobody in the East. Except
nobody in the
Eagles.
East. I mean, the Eagles, I mean, you never want to jinx anything, and I don't mean to jinx them by saying this, but it'd be very hard for the Eagles not to win the NFC East right now. I mean, the Eagles are playing well. They're at 6-2. They're in good shape, and the rest of the division is falling apart.
Ray, if the Eagles just split these next 2 games in Green Bay and Detroit at home, they're right on track.
Yeah, they are. But a lot of people are asking me, what do you think about the team? What do you think about the team? How far can they go? Can they repeat? All valid questions, and you could make a case for any of it for sure. But what I've been saying, and it sounds like a hedge, but it's just being realistic. I think the next 2 weeks are going to tell you an awful lot. I mean, Green Bay lost a game at home on Sunday to Carolina. It never should have happened. Probably it was they were looking ahead to the Eagles game. I mean, this is a really big game for both of those teams. The Eagles have to play Green Bay in Lambeau on a Monday night, which is very tough. And Green Bay is going to be ready to play Monday night. You know that.
Yeah, but they've lost one of their key weapons.
Their tight end.
And that's Tucker Kraft.
Who's a really good player.
Number 85. They've lost him.
Really,
and that's big.
Good
That's
player.
really big.
Really good player. Tight end out of that tight end factory at South Dakota State. That also produced Dallas Goedert. And years ago, for those of you that are old enough to remember, also produced Pete Retzlaff from the 1960 team. So, yeah, nobody refers to South Dakota State as a football factory, and they're never going to appear in the national championship game. But they seem to be able to produce tight ends. And this kid Kraft was a really good one for the Packers. Was probably their best receiver. and he went down with a knee injury, and he's now done for the year. That's a big loss for the Packers. But the Eagles still have to go there and play them on Monday night. And then they have to come back here and play a really dangerous and really tough Detroit team at home, where the Eagles are very good, but it's on a short week because the Eagles are coming off a Monday night game. Neither of those games are going to be easy.
Ray, let me share a worry about this team, because I'm not being negative, because you know me, but I'm being real with you. If there's one concern that I have right now, it's the fact that the offensive line last year was better than the offensive line this year. And the reason I say that is because Cam Jurgens is coming off of a back surgery and a knee problem, and he's not the same right now. Landon Dickerson, knee and back. Lane Johnson, neck problem. He's in and out. Young player in Tyler Steen. This offensive line right now is not at the level of the Super Bowl offensive line.
Yep, for sure. And that's why a lot of people, it's a very obvious question for people to ask is, what's the problem with the running game? I mean, last year, the Eagles' running game wasn't just good, it was great. It was record-setting. I mean, Saquon Barkley ran for 2,000 yards. Nobody in the history of the Eagles franchise had ever done that. And was getting 100-yard games all the time, 60, 70-yard touchdown runs all the time. Made it actually look easy. And yes, Barkley was great, it's true. But the offensive line was the best in football by leaps and bounds. And they come out this year, and you're struggling. You know, Barkley can't even get 100 yards a game. Some games he's getting in the 40s. And what's wrong with Barkley? There's nothing wrong with him. I mean, you saw that last week. I mean, the problem has been up front, where the Eagles' offensive line, which has been the best in football for years, without question the best in football, and that allowed them to control the line of scrimmage, control the game, control the clock, move the sticks, all those things. It all started up front. They have really good still position players. Obviously, the quarterback's very good. The receivers are really good. Barkley was fantastic last year. But the real strength and the real guts of that offense starts up front, tackle to tackle. Last year, they were the best. So far this year, they have not been. Now, what you saw at home, the game against the Giants, the last game, looked a lot like what you saw last year. Now, can they sustain that and be that same offensive line the second half of the year? If they can do that, they have a real chance to go back and win the Super Bowl. But they have to prove it moving forward. And, again, I will say the next two games are going to be very telling to see how they play Green Bay in Green Bay and how they play against the Lions, because those are two quality opponents.
You know, one of the big strengths of that offensive line is Jordan Mailata, 6'7", 360 pounds. He's amazing. I remember the first year when he came here, he was a rugby player. I went up to Jeff Stoutland, who is the best offensive line coach I've ever been around, and I said, Stout, how's Jordan Mailata doing? Can you play him any of these games? And he said, you know, Merrill, it would be like asking you to go up there today and do the game in French. And I said, after bonjour, I'm dead.
It really is one of the most amazing stories they are ever going to see in the National Football League, that a guy from Australia that had never played American football, never played a down of American football, didn't even know the first thing about American football, came over here almost on a dare and went to one of these sports academies out west, got himself an agent, and decided he was going to try and play in the National Football League. And Howie Roseman, to his credit, in the draft, the 7th round, the 233rd pick or whatever, picks Jordan Mailata. And people were laughing. People were snickering, saying, come on, are you kidding me? You're drafting a guy who's never played football? He's going to play in the NFL? They brought him here. They put him with Jeff Stoutland, that Merrill just referred to, the Eagles offensive line coach, who is, I agree, I think he's the best offensive line coach I've ever seen.
Me too.
And just made him, Stout, this is your project. 6'8", 365 pounds, turn this guy into a football player. And, you know, he didn't play in a game for the first 2 years. I mean, it was all just learning how to line up, learning how to get in a stance, learning 4 downs for 10 yards. I mean, learning all that stuff. You had to start with this guy from the ground up.
He even learned to sing.
And, well, he came with his guitar. That we knew. He could sing and he could play the guitar. We didn't know if he could play football. But by the third year, he had learned enough that they were able to put him out there and let him compete, and he became not just a capable player, he became a star player. I mean, and right now, he is one of the best, if not the best, left tackle in the National Football League. So to think that this guy came out of Australia, never having seen the game, came here and has now become one of the best players in the league and an absolute star is just an amazing story. And he's also, and Merrill can vouch for this, he's also a delightful guy.
He's a great guy.
He's really a delightful
Right.
guy.
Let me mention another name, because we talked about the 3 guys that came here this weekend. Howie picked up a guy 4 weeks ago, from Jacksonville, because they couldn't return a kickoff, and his name is Tank Bigsby. And other than the fact that his name was close to a program director who I hated years ago named Bigby, I didn't know what to expect. And Tank Bigsby came in, and he couldn't field a kickoff against the Rams. They were kicking that knuckleball. It was hitting him in the helmet. It was hitting him in the face. He was terrible. This past week, or 2 weeks ago, he came in against the Giants as a running back, and they couldn't stop him. He was explosive. So it seems like Howie struck again.
Mm-hmm. He is the best general manager in football. And one of the things about Howie is he never stops working, and he never stops trying to improve the team. I mean, every day he's looking at his roster, and every day he's looking at the other board that has available players out there. And he's just trying to see if there any one move I can make that just maybe one more position, one more player that can make my team a little bit better, a little bit stronger. And there were, I believe, 7 trades in the NFL over the last 24 hours in this run-up to the trade deadline, which was yesterday, and the Eagles made 3 of them. I mean, there are a lot of other teams out there that were looking to make moves, but at the last minute they pulled back and said, no, I don't think so. I don't like the price. I'm not so sure about they backed off. Howie went ahead and did it. Now, no guarantee that these are all going to work. There's no guarantee that any of these are going to work. But the fact is that Howie's always willing to take the chance. And by doing that, and by being that aggressive, that's why he's built a team that has been to 3 Super Bowls now in, the last 6 years? I mean, no team in the league other than the Chiefs have been able to say that. And, I mean, the coaches and the players get a lot of credit, and they should, because they're the ones that have to do it on the field. But the guy who builds the team is the guy in the front office, and that's Howie Roseman. You know, I have to ask a question of the audience here. How many of you were at the Eagles-Giants game Sunday? Okay. A fair number, okay. When the Giants player, the rookie running back, got hurt and broke his ankle, and they put him on the cart and drove him off the field and up the tunnel. You're aware of it because you were there. And on TV, they kind of vaguely mentioned it but didn't really. But I thought it bears mentioning. The Philadelphia fans gave that kid a standing ovation.
Yeah.
And listen, it was just a couple weeks before, he put 3 touchdowns on the Eagles and was backflipping in the end zone and doing a lot of stuff that I think got under a lot of people's skin, okay, mine included, okay. You can enjoy it, but don't enjoy it too much, okay. I thought he went a little overboard, but I like the kid. I think he's a hell of a player, and he had really made a difference in that Giants team, and he went down with an awful injury. But when they took him off the field, the Philadelphia fans, in a tremendously classy gesture, gave him a standing ovation. Yeah. And I thought that was really great.
I agree. Cam Scattaboo. Great name, huh? Cam Scattaboo. I love saying it. Scattaboo! But the truth of the matter is, we're going to hear about him for a lot of years. And I think we're also going to hear about their quarterback, Jackson Dart, for a long time, too.
Yeah, the Giants are kind of a mess.
If they don't mess him up.
Yeah, the Giants are kind of a mess, but they've got 2 really good young players there. But Merrill has been, and I have been, because we're both native Philadelphians. We're both born here, raised here, went to school here, worked here, grew up going to games at Connie Mack Stadium, grew up going to games at Franklin Field, grew up going to doubleheaders at the Palestra. I mean, we're about as Philly gets, the 2 of us. And because we're in the media, and because we're in the press boxes, and because we're traveling the circuit all the time, we hear a lot of the criticism that's out there about Philadelphia. and about Philadelphia fans and what bad fans they are and how mean they are and how they boo their players and how they're nasty to the visiting teams. And that whole stereotype,
The Santa Claus junk.
the whole snowballs at Santa Claus thing, all roads lead back to Santa Claus.
Yeah.
In all
They
of this.
do.
And
They do.
And Merrill's been hearing it, and I've been hearing it for all of these years. All of this, which I think is a terribly bad rap. I think the Philadelphia fans are the best fans.
They are.
In all
They
of
are. The
professional
best.
sports. I really do. And I think that, and I hope, especially since that was a New York game with the New York media in the press box, to see how those fans responded to that moment. I hope that maybe they will acknowledge that, you know what, maybe the Philadelphia fans aren't quite as bad as I thought. Now, I'm not counting on it.
They're not.
I don't think that they will, but it would be nice. But I just wanted to say, for you fans that were there and for you fans that took part in that, that was a really classy thing to do, and you represented our city well.
You know, I have to tell you something that I do to New York fans. Every now and then I will speak at a corporate event up in North Jersey, and I will say to the fans, you're not going to realize this. You're not going to believe this. But deep down, I love the Giants. And there's silence in the room. And then I say, because without the Giants, I wouldn't have had 2 miracles of the Meadowlands to describe. And then they moan.
That is true. That is true. You know, the one of the chapters in this book deals with the 1960 Eagles season, the championship season, that when Merrill and I were both kids in the stands, Merrill by himself listening on his transistor radio,
12.
me sitting with my parents, my grandparents watching the game. As it turns out, I guess we were sitting right near each other because the Tommy McDonald touchdown was right in front of me, too.
Me too.
And the Bednarik tackle of Jim
I probably
Taylor
hit you
was
in the
right
head
there.
with popcorn.
Probably did. But that whole season and the whole Bednarik story is one of the most amazing stories in my lifetime in professional sports, is what Bednarik did. And when people say, what was the most fun you had in writing the book, I think part of the most fun I had and a big part of the enjoyment I had was paying homage to those guys. You know, because most of you all here that are Eagles fans now, I mean, the recent history, you know. You know, Philly Special, you know. Nick Foles, you know. Saquon Barkley, you certainly know. Jason Kelsey, everybody knows. I mean, that modern history of Eagles football, we're all familiar with. But what this franchise was built on, what this team was built on, the players who helped build this thing, the guys in the 40s, the Bednariks, the Van Burens, the Pihoses, running into the 60s, the Van Brocklins, the McDonalds, the Retzlaffs, those guys. Those are the guys that really kind of laid the foundation for pro football in the city and sold the game in the city before anybody really was buying. You know, when they came to Franklin Field, and Merrill remembers this from going to the games, when the Eagles came to Franklin Field and started playing games in Franklin Field in 1958, before they won the championship, you would go to an Eagles game at Franklin Field and there'd be 20,000 people.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole upper deck would be empty.
There'd be 70,000 there on Saturday to see Penn.
And there'd be maybe 20,000 people there to see the Eagles. Now, 1960 changed all that. And one of the things that I tried to do in this book was to honor, obviously, the recent players and the recent heroes and the ones that everybody knows. But I really enjoyed having the opportunity to go back and write about the guys who came before and the guys who helped build this team and won those championships in the 40s and won the championship in the 60s, and tell people just who Chuck Bednarik was, who Norm Van Brocklin was, who Tommy McDonald was, you know, and why he became my boyhood hero, how all that happened. To have the opportunity to be able to actually write that and put that kind of living history out there for a whole new audience of people that they're thoroughly into the Eagles, but they don't kind of know where it all came from. Having had the opportunity to sit back and write it and actually put it on paper is probably the greatest satisfaction. And writing that 1960 chapter and really telling the story of what Bednarik did that year at the age of 35, playing both ways down the stretch as a 35-year-old in the 1960, in the championship game against the Lombardi Packers, one of the greatest teams of all time, when the Eagles played them for the championship at Franklin Field, there were 142 snaps in that game, 142 plays in that game. Chuck Bednarik, at the age of 35, played 139 of 142 snaps, and then made the tackle to save the game at the 7-yard line to win the championship.
You're not going to say
it's just
what
an,
he said
it's
to
just
Jim
an amazing
Taylor.
story. Amazing then and amazing today.
What did he say to Jim Taylor?
This effing game is over.
Yep.
Chuck has told me that story many times.
Me too.
Many times.
You know, Ray, one of the things I hate is when a writer or even a broadcaster says, this is the best wide receiver in Eagles history, or this is the best whatever in Eagles history. I separate them because I use the word modern history, because I never saw a more magnificent quarterback, and in those days, they called their own plays, they ran the offense, than Norm Van Brocklin in 1960. Now, I will tell you something else. I think that one day, maybe 10 years from now, we will look back and say, Jalen Hurts is the greatest quarterback in modern Eagles history.
That could very well be. I know that I have to compliment Merrill here because he was one of the very first guys, if not the first guy, that was totally on board with Jalen Hurts from the day the Eagles drafted him. Totally believed it, totally thought it was the right pick, absolutely felt that the kid could play in the NFL, absolutely believed that ultimately he was going to be the guy, and then after he won the job that he was going to win big time, and he was going to take this team to a championship. You know, and there were ups and downs in that, as there always are in the National Football League. But Merrill never wavered in his belief that if they stick with this kid, he's going to win for them. He's going to be that guy, and he demonstrated last year that he was. You know, I mean that was a tough situation. I mean, when you look back at that game, when you look back at Super Bowl 59. I mean, look, I thought they were going to win that game. I really did. I mean, the way they were playing down the stretch, the way they were coming on, the way their defensive line was playing, and the way Kansas City's offensive line was playing, which was not very well, I thought that was a matchup that the Eagles were going to dominate. And if they dominated the Chiefs' offensive line to the degree that I thought they would, then they were going to put so much pressure on Patrick Mahomes that he wasn't going to be able to do his thing. As great as Mahomes is, and he is, the Eagles weren't going to give him a chance to get off in that game, and that's pretty much the way it worked out. I didn't expect it to be 24-0 at halftime. I did not expect that, but I really did expect the Eagles to win. But to see the way Hurts responded to it, the Chiefs, I mean, they certainly put the handcuffs on Barkley. Barkley did not run wild in that game because they set out that we're not going to let Barkley beat us. You know, we're going to shut him down, and we're going to take our chances with the passing game. And Jalen Hurts made him pay. As a result, the Eagles were world champs, and Hurts rode off with the MVP award.
May I share something with all of you? Cindy and I went to the ring ceremony, which was great, on a Friday night, and we have that great big ring with the diamonds and the wings. Wonderful. But something happened 4 days later that had even more meaning to me. After practice at camp, I was sitting in the tent, and somebody from the equipment room came out and handed me a box. And I opened up the box, and in the box were a brand new pair of custom Air Jordan Eagles cleats. And on the white part of the cleats was the inscription, to M. Reese, you saw it when no one else could. Love always, Jalen Hurts. That says more about Jalen Hurts than it does about me.
Well, we want to leave some time here at the end of the program for you guys to ask questions if you guys have anything on your mind. So this is an opportunity to do that. I think there's do we have time?
Yes,
Dan?
we do. We have a little time. Could we have one more round of applause before we go to Q&A? All right, folks, we do have time for a few questions. Just please wait until the microphone arrives before you start speaking. Right here, third row center.
So you've been talking about Mr. Roseman, who's just a knockout, but Jeffrey Lurie is the best owner I could have ever
Absolutely.
imagined to have. I'd love to know from both of you, who was the worst owner of Philadelphia's history?
Do you want to go first, or should I?
Well, did you say in Eagles history or in Eagles history? Well, I like him. He's a very nice man. But Stan Hochman of the Daily News used to refer to him as Bottom Line Bremen. Leonard Tost really wanted to win. He was passionate. Jeffrey Lurie is passionate. Norman Bremen was a businessman, a very nice man, and this is not a personal assault. But as an owner, I thought that Leonard cared the most, and I think Jeffrey is the best owner I've ever been around.
Jeff is, yes, that's a very good question. It's a very good question, because I don't think that the average fan understands how important good ownership is. I think people have a sense that in a football organization you have the football side, and then you have the business side, and you have the coaches and the players and the general manager. They do the football stuff, and then the business guys do whatever the business guys do, and the two of them operate sort of independently, and the owner just kind of sits in his box and watches the games. It's not really true. I mean, bad ownership. It's very hard, next to impossible, to win in the NFL if you have bad ownership. If you have really good ownership, it doesn't guarantee you that you'll win, but at least it gives you a chance. You can't overcome bad ownership. And the perfect example of that is the Washington franchise, the former Redskins, now the Commanders. For years and years and years, that Washington team was one of the great teams. It was one of the proudest franchises in the NFL. They won 3 Super Bowls, went to another one, filled their stadium every week, Hall of Fame coaches, Hall of Fame players. Washington was in it every year. And then Daniel Snyder bought the team. And look where they've been. They've been lost in the wilderness ever since.
Yep.
And that all starts at the top. So the idea that a bad owner, what does that matter? No, it matters a lot. But a good owner can make a tremendous difference for a team. And the Eagles have been on, for the last 30 years, a remarkably good run of being consistently among the best teams. With a dip here and there. But for the most part, they're in it pretty much every year. And credit to the coaches, credit to the players, absolutely. But that kind of sustained excellence has to start at the top. And that's Jeff Lurie. He's been the best owner by far.
Other questions? Yes, right here in the center, white shirt.
I have a big mouth. I don't need the mic even. Thank you. Still would rather not with the mic, but thank you. I got the mic. I would love to hear your opinions of the A.J. Brown soap opera. It's, I've back and forth on WIP all the time, but I would love your honest as you could possibly be, opinion of what's been going on, the social media debacle and whatnot.
It's much ado about nothing, and here's why. I've been around bad wide receivers off the field. Terrell Owens took that locker room apart. A.J. Brown is a nice guy. The players love him. The coaches, he's very respectful to his coaches. Yes, he goes a little nuts with the social media, and his sign says, "I'm always open," but he's a good guy, and he doesn't destroy that locker room. And he and Devontae Smith are 2 magnificent wide receivers. He's not going anyplace. He does not in any way, form, bring anything negative to this team, except he heightens the talk shows.
Yeah, I think Merrill pretty much said kind of what I was thinking. Part of the problem with the A.J. Brown story is that everybody views in this town, and I understand it, okay, but it's true. Everybody views the A.J. Brown story through the prism of Terrell Owens. Because they play the same position, because they're very much the same kind of player, everybody kind of sees this as the same thing, and it's not. It's apples and oranges. I mean, Terrell Owens was all about his money, his contract, his dissatisfaction with the front office. A.J. Brown isn't dealing with any of that at all. Merrill's right. I mean, Terrell Owens tore that dressing room apart. You don't see that with A.J. Brown. the social media stuff, is it out there too much? Yeah, for sure. We're all weary of it. We're all tired of it. It would probably be a really good thing if Nick Sirianni could just say to him, hey, look, AJ, you got some problems. Come in my office. Let's talk about it, okay? But don't share it with everybody that in a car listening on WIP. That's not helping you. It's not helping me. It's not helping the team. You got problems. You got issues. You probably do. Let's just come in here. We'll close the door. We'll work it out. But that's not the world we live in. And, you know, AJ is a guy who's going to live out his life on social media. That's just him. But the idea, and people were saying to me the last week or so, oh, the Eagles going to trade A.J. Brown? I said, no, they're not trading A.J. Brown.
I even like the fact that he enhances his knowledge by reading on the bench.
And listen, the guy was a journalism major in college, so how bad can he be? Okay? but probably having said that, a little less writing probably would do. Help.
Other questions? Yes, over here on the aisle.
Thank you so much. This has been great. What advice do you have for aspiring sportscasters, sports writers about your profession, especially young women?
My advice for sports broadcasters, whether they're men or women, it doesn't matter, is to become a great reader, to become a voracious reader. I never grew up describing games on television, or while I was out playing ball, I was never saying, here's the pitch. I wasn't doing any of that. I was out playing games, but I became a voracious reader, and that is where your vocabulary is developed, and that is where you are able to describe things, and you have the right words at the right time. So whether you're a young man or a young woman, become a reader.
Yeah, I think that's good advice. I think that's good advice. And even if you don't really aspire to be a quote-unquote print journalist, even if you don't really, and I wouldn't advise anybody to try and get into newspapers because sadly newspapers are not a growth industry these days. But I would encourage you to write and write, read a lot and write a lot, because the ability to write and compose, even if you're just talking into a microphone, is incredibly valuable. And wherever you're going to go to try and get a job, I can guarantee you that somebody there is going to ask you for a writing sample. That's just part of that practice. They want to see how you write. The more you have read and the more you've practiced your writing, the better you're going to be able to compose a writing sample, and a really good writing sample will stand apart from most of what's being handed in these days. So reading a ton and writing a lot and developing those skills, even if you aren't necessarily going to be a quote-unquote print writer, I think is really important.
Ray, as a broadcaster, I'm used to having to do tags. Merrill's advice was brought to you by the Free Library of Philadelphia.
Folks, I can't imagine a better note on which to end than that one. A reminder that copies of this Eagles Encyclopedia are for sale. There are just a few left, a very few for sale up in the lobby of courtesy of Uncle Bobby's, and Ray has very kindly agreed to sign them. But before we head up there, how about a big round of applause?